Iris Cooper was small for her age. She looked more like 10 than 12, in her cut-off jeans with ragged edges, a pink t-shirt, and scuffed pink cowboy boots her father, Chip, had bought at a yard sale. She stood watching the horses tethered under a tree on a blazing hot day in Lake City, Texas, kicking pebbles with the toe of her cowboy boot. She was humming to herself, as she always did. She could hear music in her head. She composed songs on her father's guitar, and they sounded pretty good. She'd gone to school in Lake City for 4 months. She'd been to 3 schools so far that year. Her father liked to move around a lot, looking for opportunities to make some money. He got tired of the towns they went to pretty fast. He rented a room for each of them in someone's house, stayed for a few months, and then they moved on. Iris liked it when they stayed in a town with a church. She could sing with the choir, and they were always happy to have her. She could hit the high notes better than anyone else. Once they heard her sing, they let her stay. She could go to the church socials and eat pot roast and fried chicken, potato salad, or mashed potatoes. The rest of the time, they lived on fast food, and whatever her father could afford that day, sometimes just a can of beans or some chili. Her name had been prophetic. She had deep blue eyes, the color of an iris, and a mass of soft blonde hair that framed her face. She wore it in a braid that she could do herself. Her mother, Violet, had left her and her father when she was 2. He never told her, but she'd once heard him say that Violet was killed during a bar fight in East Texas after she left. She and her boyfriend had been at the bar when someone pulled out a gun, shot into the crowd during the fight, and killed them both. She and Chip had a rocky marriage, and when she left Chip, it was easier to leave Iris with him. Iris didn't remember her, so she didn't miss her. You couldn't miss someone you'd never known, but she missed having a mother, like other kids. Chip had grown up as an orphan, living with 2 unmarried uncles who paid as little attention to him as possible, and made him sleep outside when they brought women home. Chip had left them at 16 and never saw them again. He got work wherever he could find it doing odd jobs, and used to ride the bulls and broncos in the rodeo, until he got trampled by a bull and hurt his leg. He walked with a limp now, and his rodeo days were over. Iris liked going to rodeos with him. Sometimes he saw old friends. They lived now from the work he picked up wherever he found it, tending bar, doing carpentry, working on a ranch when they needed extra help. He always found something, and when there were no jobs, they moved on to another town and started all over again. Iris's dream was to stay in one town for a long time, like other people, and go to the same school for years at a time. Her father said they'd settle down one day, but they hadn't yet. They'd been roaming around the small towns in Texas for the last 10 years. She wrote a song about it that she played on his guitar. She was still watching the horses when Chip came out of the house where they were staying and told her to get in his truck. They were going for a ride. It was an old green truck he'd had for as long as she could remember. It got them from one town to the next, with everything they owned in boxes tied up in the back, a plastic sheet over them, secured with ropes. She hopped onto the passenger seat, and he got in and started the engine. They drove off a minute later, down a back road in the direction of the town. She never asked where they were going. It didn't really matter. She watched the cattle and the horses as they drove past them. They stopped at a bar just outside of town. A red neon sign read, "Harry's Bar." Chip parked and turned off the engine and looked at her.